Hello everybody and welcome to this lesson from Miss Duckle's classroom. Today we're going to be looking at how to analyse a literature extract, and this is for the play Death and the King's Horseman. So first of all, let's have a quick look at the assessment objectives, just so you've got an idea of exactly which skills are being tested for this question. First of all, we have AO1. AO1 is showing that you have a good understanding of the extract. So you've been through it, you've read it, you understand who is involved, what is happening, if there's any conflict, what the themes are, and why this particular moment is significant to the overall story within the play. So think about where it is, what happens before, what happens after. AO1 is also where you have to show that you can make reference to the text, so you use quotations to support your ideas. AO2 is all about the deeper meanings of the text, so think about the big ideas, making sure that you show that you can infer meaning and you've got your own interpretations with regards to the question. Also to show that you've got a good understanding of the writer's intention or the message. So why did Soyinka write the play? What was his intention? What's his message? What's the purpose? What effect does he want to have on the audience? What does he want them to think or feel? At what point? Why? And also any relevant contextual information. Now, you may have a lot of contextual knowledge for any of the texts that you study, but just remember, you're not just bolting on your contextual information. If you know some contextual information, use it to support your answer. Don't just tag information on. And AO3 is the ability to demonstrate a good understanding of how events, characters, relationships are presented. Anything to do with how is your method. So how does language, structure and form create and shape meaning? And then you must also be linking that back to the why. Why is a character presented in this way? Why is an interaction presented in this way? What's the message? What are you supposed to understand? What's the effect? And finally, AO4 is about how you present your ideas. So think about definitely making a plan, organising the ideas that you have from the extract, thinking about which quotations you want to use and where, and just making sure that your response is sophisticated, clear and coherent. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the steps. So there are several steps that I advise that you go through. Some of them you may decide to merge, some of them you may go through quicker than others, some of them you may feel that you don't really need. But just to ensure that you're fully addressing the question and you've got a very good understanding of the extract before you start to write, I do recommend that you organise the way in which you approach the extract. So the first thing to do is simply read the question and deconstruct it. By that I mean highlight the key words. What do they mean? What then is your focus? What do you understand your focus to be when you're looking at the extract? Think about the key words and what they mean, and also think about any synonyms for those key words, because obviously what you don't want is you don't want to sound too repetitive in your answer. So you can use the key words such as powerful and revealing, but you can also make sure that you're using some synonyms for those as well. So for example, explore the ways in which Soyinka makes this such a powerful and revealing moment in the play. Powerful, think about why it's important, why it's effective, how it's effective, what makes it striking. And for revealing, what is revealed to you? Think about how it could be illuminating or enlightening in some way. What do you, the audience, understand? So this is the extract that I'm going to be using for today. I do advise you just to pause the video here, just so that you can have a quick read of the extract yourself, and just so you can really just test yourself. What do you understand to be happening? At this point, you've already read the play, you've already probably covered it at length with your teachers, so you probably will be able to already pick out a lot of things to do with the characters, what they're talking about, why it's significant, and you can also see that you're told it's from Act 4, so you can then position it in your head and think about what's led up to this moment, what happens after this moment, why is this moment so important, what makes it quite revealing. So once you've read through the extract and you've made your notes, just start to brainstorm some ideas with regards to what you initially see and your initial response. And this is just an example of how I like to brainstorm ideas as I go through. So when I see an extract, I try and organise my ideas in terms of the significance of this particular extract, what I already know about the play and the themes. Please don't look at the extract as something that is not a part of the play. It doesn't stand in isolation. It is a part of something much, much bigger, something which you do know in a lot of detail. So try not to take it out of the play and look at it as a standalone extract. It's not. So do just think about, what do I already know? What are the themes? What ideas have already been explored? What is the importance of the play even? And you know, how do I respond to it? What do you already know about the characters and the relationships? And then also you can make a list of words and phrases that just come to your mind when you're just thinking about, okay, what are the big ideas, or what are the overarching ideas that Suyuncu is trying to show me in this particular extract? And this is massively helpful because there's so much in here that you will then be able to use and just pepper throughout your essay, but also it will really help you not only with making the points in your essay, but it will help you with your analysis as well, and it help you to make those interpretations. There's so many key ideas here that can just be pulled into the essay. So what you're actually doing is you're helping yourself, you're giving yourself enough to talk about later on. So just some of the ideas, obviously you can pause the video and you can have a look. I'm not going to read through it all, but just an overview of some of the ideas that just popped out when I read this extract. So what is the significance? You've got that conflict between the two cultures, really, really obvious, because we see that it's Jane and it's Olunde. So you can really see, obviously, right, I know what I'm looking at here. Within this extract, because we do see these characters together for an extended period, but within this particular extract, what we do see is we see Jane's sense of superiority and a lack of understanding, even though we do know from previous moments in the play that she does have the capacity to understand, much more so than her husband. But here we do see her fall back into that colonial mindset. What we already know that the play is about life and death. We've got the importance of ritual and sacrifice, culture, duty, collective responsibility. We do have that colonial influence, which is evident throughout, but probably more so here with the character of Jane. And then we've just got some ideas down here, words and phrases that I wrote down just as I was reading through. This idea of death, because that's what they are talking about, but also within that, the cultural significance of death. The ignorance maybe of the colonial mindset, the insight of Olunde, the ritual suicide that comes out there, and this idea of superiority between the two characters. So now we've got our big ideas, we've got our notes that are really, really helpful, and those notes are actually going to help you much more now when you go back through the extract and you start to highlight anything that's relevant to the question itself, but also to your initial ideas. So, for example, one of the ideas that I wrote down as I was reading through is ritual and death. So maybe then when I'm going back through the extract, what I'm going to be doing is thinking, okay, well, that maybe can be one of my ideas, one of my points. I'm going to highlight things to do with ritual if that's what they're talking about, or anything to do with death. So those initial notes can become quite useful later on. So if you find it a little bit daunting to look at an extract and initially you can think, well, I don't know what to talk about, I don't know what to pick out, I've just given you a list of things here just to have next to you when you're practicing, when you're revising, because there's a wealth of things that you can pick out of any extract. And here's just some ideas. So if you think, I don't know what to look for, can you find any symbols? Can you find any patterns? Patterns are a really, really easy way of not only helping yourself to find quotations that can be used together, but also they really help you with the organization of your ideas and the sophistication of your writing. Grouping quotations together into patterns is a really sophisticated thing to do. And then you've got things like clauses, so you can talk about sentences and the clauses. You can think about imagery, think about particular words, think about any contrast or any conflict or if there's tension. So there's a wealth of things to pick out of any extract. It's just for you to decide what it is that you can see, but not only what it is that you can see, what it is that you can actually talk about in an essay format. So these are my initial selections. So you can see I've picked quite a lot. I'm not going to be able to use all of these in the time that I have to write my essay, but these were just my initial highlights. So I thought, that's interesting, I like that. But I will have to cut it down later on. But it's a good idea to just think, right, okay, what stands out to me? Because then what you can do is you can go through a process of elimination. Then you think, okay, which ones can be grouped? Okay, I'll keep those. Which ones have got something in there that's really easy to analyse, a language device, or maybe it's a dramatic device because it's a play, I'll keep that. And then you might think, well, actually, now I don't know what I would say about that. And you can start to eliminate. You'll notice that I've colour coordinated selected it for this particular extract. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends what's standing out to me. And again, this just helps me with my grouping. So anything to do with purple is to do with a dramatic device, something specific to the form. So obviously you've got the interruption of music here, but also I've gone for some stage directions that I think are particularly important. So they're all dramatic devices. Anything in blue is more to do with the language and things that I've noticed about language, and anything in yellow is to do with structure. So you notice that it's mainly to do with punctuation. We've got this repetition of questions as well. We've got exclamatory phrases. We've got characters cutting each other off. Again, this repetition of questions. So I've just decided to group it based upon what I can see. And it also helps me to know what I'm able to analyse. It's nice for you to be able to analyse multiple different things, you know, your language, your structure and your form. So once you've highlighted, then you can start to make a plan. You can start to look back to that big list of all of the different ideas that you initially had and think, well, okay, which ones, now I've got all of these highlights, do I think could actually build up an essay? And then once you've done that, you can think about which examples are going to help you, which examples are now of no use. When you've got your ideas in response to the question, so my response is I think this, and I think this, and I think this, and I'm going to prove it, then what's your evidence to prove it? And then once you've got your evidence, if you've got time, you can start to make little notes on the extract, because then you want to think about your how, you want to think about your methods. You know, what techniques can you see, what dramatic devices can you see, what can you say about the language choices, and then also ultimately you're really thinking about the effect. So then go back to your notes. So think about, can any of this now be used to help me? Can I use this to help me build a point? Remember, you are going to need clear points that answer the question, and then you bring in your evidence. Is it going to help you to explain a quotation? Is it going to help you to interpret meaning? Can you link it to some contextual references, particularly, you know, with the culture, colonial influences? And can you also think about, well, does this help me to understand the effect of this particular word choice or technique or dramatic device? And does it help me to understand what Soyinka is trying to show me, or what he wants the audience to do, think or feel? And once you've gone through that, and you've looked at your big ideas, and you've got your highlights, and you're pulling all of this together, that is when you make a plan. So try and make a very brief plan, but you know, you do need a plan. Lots of people choose to skip this particular stage. I wouldn't advise that, because it does just help you with the coherence of your essay, but also means that all similar ideas are together, rather than you rushing and having to go back to something that you didn't really explore in enough detail, and then it just seems quite disjointed. Now you'll notice that I've just put my ideas into a planning table. You can do your plan however you like. It can be as organised or as messy or as brief as you like. It's whatever works for you. The main thing that I would say is that you definitely do need to have some points written out. I like to write mine in full sentences, just because then they can just be pulled right into an essay. I don't have to really think about it. All I now have to think about is which quotations I want to use. So what I recommend is you get your points down, and then you go back to your extract and you number the quotations on your extract that you are now going to use. So if this is point 1, then you choose the quotations that support point 1. And I advise you to choose 2 to 3 quotations for each point, because you want to have a range of evidence to support your ideas, rather than just focusing on one quotation. You want to be able to go for that sophistication of your response by showing that you can pull in multiple quotations, especially if you've been able to see any patterns. Add notes on your extract. This will help you with your analysis. So if you see it, write it, jot down some ideas, because again, the less thinking that you need to do later on, once you're writing up your essay, if you've got all your notes and ideas on a piece of paper, all you're doing is pulling them in and developing them, rather than having to think from scratch. So the points that I've decided upon, and I've used all of the notes that I had, you know, the big ideas, what I already know, the themes, some keywords. I've used all of those ideas and the highlights to formulate something in my head. So I looked at some of the quotations that I've highlighted and looked for patterns, and actually some of the patterns really fed in quite nicely to these points. So point 1 is, Soyinka notably presents the division between English and Yoruba culture. You definitely do see that between Jane and Olunde. Soyinka effectively depicts Olunde as a character who is insightful, wise, and able to challenge colonial values. And the scene creates a sense of conflict in the way Jane and Ollende view death. So I did notice the few references to death and definitely her reaction to his response to his father's death. That really stood out for me, so I thought that would be a good thing to talk about. And at this point, I would just like to remind you, if any of this you're struggling with, or you think, oh, I don't know what she means by making a clear point, or I'm not sure how she formulated those points, all of the literature skills that you need for your exam, I've put into different micro lessons. They're very short, snappy, and they just cover things like embedding quotations, making clear points, how to analyze a quotation. So if there's any element of this that you think I don't go into in enough detail and you'd like more information, then do just head over to the micro lessons section of my YouTube channel, and you'll be able to just find anything that's really specific to your own needs. So what you can see here is I've gone back to my highlighted extract. I've got my points here just to remind me. So this is my plan, just to remind me of the points that I now need to prove. I've got to find evidence to support them. So what I've done is I've gone back through and I've just numbered all of the quotations that I now think that I want. And these quotations go quite nicely with my points. So obviously point 1, I've numbered all the quotations that I want for point 1 as number 1, and the same for 2 and for 3. You'll notice that I've got 3 quotations for point 1 and 2 and only 2 quotations for 3. I felt that there were only, I could only really pick 2 good quotations for 3, but I've got enough depth of quotations for 1 and 2, and I probably will go into a lot of detail on these ones, so that should be okay. You'll notice that what I've also done is begun to add a little bit of annotation. So number 1, I've decided to pick this here. Repetition shows both the similarities and contrast in their viewpoint because they both repeat the same word, albeit change it ever so slightly. So that's something that I will talk about. So it's a good idea just to jot down any techniques, jot down any interpretations that you have, or any analysis, connotations of language. So what you now have what you want to say with regards to why this extract is significant and important, why it's powerful, what is revealed to you. You've gone with the question and you've made sure that you've got enough ideas. You've now also got your evidence. You should have, if you've analysed as you've gone through techniques, language choices, dramatic devices that you know you can comment on, some notes as well, and a clear plan. You can now use all of this to write up your answer in detail. And just before I go, just to recap everything that we've done today, if you need some help remembering it, you can just remember the dream technique. So if you just think in your head as you sit in your exam hall, you open your paper, you think of dream, you deconstruct the question, pull out your keywords, think of synonyms, read and understand the extract, highlight the extract as well, analyse the choices that you've got, eliminate any irrelevant or weak choices or that are not going to help you with your plan, and then make a plan. So thank you very much for taking part in this lesson. Do look out for the next one, which is how to write up your answer. Thank you very much. Goodbye.